What are your thoughts about vaccination?
We know that the core vaccines, most of them are going to last a lifetime, or at least half a lifetime. There was no science behind that. It was just a way to get everybody to come in the office every year. You get that reminder card, your dog's due for shots, you're going to show up.
What are your thoughts about supplements?
Vitamin D is another one that is commonly low.
Can you quickly explain what titer test is?
Yeah, so it's a blood test.
Hello dog lover, my name is Saro. I'm a dog trainer, also coach dog owners, and in this video I have a special guest who you're gonna love. I have with me Dr. Judy Morgan, has over 36 years experience as a integrative veterinarian, acupuncturist, chiropractor, food therapist, author, and speaker. Dr. Morgan currently operates 2 veterinary hospitals that offer an integrative approach combining holistic medicine with traditional Western techniques. She's a best-selling author of 4 books, hundreds of online and print magazine articles. Her goal is to change the lives of over 10 million pets by educating and empowering pet owners worldwide in the use of natural healing, minimizing the use of chemicals, vaccination, and poor quality processed food. Dr. Judy Morgan, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
What are your thoughts about vaccination? I know there are a few things that we have to address, but you know, your thoughts about vaccinations.
Hit all the highlights. So I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm a minimalist. There's a big difference. For years, well, I started practice in the mid-'80s. So since then, for the first 30 years of practice, we were just told, hey, all these core vaccines, you give them every year. Now, there was no science behind that. It was just a way to get everybody to come in the office every year. You get that reminder card, your dog's due for shots, you're going to show up. You get a reminder card that says, hey, your dog's due for an exam. You go, man, it looks good to me. It doesn't happen. But in the past decade or so, we've actually started doing blood titers, and we know that the core vaccines, most of them are going to last a lifetime, or at least half a lifetime. And to me, it makes absolutely zero sense to stab a dog with a vaccine for something that he's already protected against. Why would we do that? And we have to look at the lifestyle of the dog. When I see someone who lives in an apartment, their dog is potty trained to use pads in the apartment. Its feet never touch the ground outside. It doesn't even go outside. Why? It doesn't go to the groomer. It doesn't go anywhere. Why would I give it influenza, leptospirosis, Lyme vaccine, Bordetella, distemper, parvo, rabies every year? It makes no sense. You really have to look at the lifestyle of the dog. What are they going to be exposed to? And one of the problems that we run up against, but it's getting so much better, is if you take your dog to boarding, daycare, grooming, agility shows, a lot of those places have vaccination requirements, and they're not realistic. They're still stuck in the, hey, you have to show me that he had a vaccine every single year. It's been one of my goals to educate boarding, grooming, daycare, show people with the fact that those dogs do not have to get all that stuff. And they're actually doing a disservice to their clients if they say, hey, everybody has to get that intranasal kennel cough vaccine the day before you show up. Well, that's good, because now we're vaccinating every single dog that's there that day because we're shedding it all over the place. It's wonderful. My dogs, trying to think what they last had. They had a rabies vaccine 5.5 years ago because we had a suspect rabid fox in the neighborhood. And I said, yeah, and they hadn't had a vaccine in probably 5 years. And the problem was the suspect rabid fox, I saw him running down the street in front of our house. And I mean, he could have had distemper, he could have had something else, but my dogs hadn't had vaccines for rabies in at least 5 years. It may have been longer. I could have run titers, but it takes a couple weeks to get the titers back. And if we had a run-in during that time period, I would have had a bigger issue. Rabies is a tough one because of the legalities of that. What I tell people is, if you happen to live in a township or a state where they will accept a titer, get a titer for rabies. They're available. If you don't have to license your dogs or show proof, then get a titer. And if you have a positive titer, why would you give another vaccine? We thought about taking one of our dogs to Japan to have heart surgery, and one of the requirements to go is you have to give a rabies vaccine, have a rabies titer, and give another vaccine within the space of 12 months. So I thought, well, she hadn't had a vaccine in 10 years. So I thought, well, let me just see what her titer is. A positive titer is considered anything over 0.5. She was at 14. 14. Wow. 10 years later. Why would I give the dog another vaccine? So my husband and I looked at each other and said, well, we don't want to give her 2 vaccines in order to get her to Japan. Not to mention, the $40,000 or whatever. But we just said, I couldn't. I would have to cry giving her the vaccine. I couldn't do it. So it really is a matter of lifestyle and what the requirements are. And I tell people, try to find a more holistic boarding, grooming, daycare, whatever. If you live in an apartment with a border collie and you got to send them to daycare or they're going to rip the place apart, then they got to go to daycare. They got to get their energy out. And so you might be stuck with what the requirements are, but my recommendation would be to try to educate those people. Try to educate them to what the vaccines are doing to our animals' bodies. And the other thing that I would tell people is, if you have to get multiple vaccines, separate them. Do not have them all given in one day. This consult that I did with this person the other day who just got into holistic medicine, 4 months ago, and who knows how long the cancer's been there, 4 months ago, her 10-pound dog was given, 12 vaccines in one day.
Wow.
10 pounds. Horrible. Big dogs will handle it better. Small dogs will not.
Right.
And so then we look at this dog and say, well, now we have a cancer problem. We've been on bad food. We've been on, really harsh flea, tick, heartworm chemicals, and we've been over-vaccinated to death. And I felt the woman cried through the entire consult. And I said, you didn't know any better. You're such a good pet owner. The doctor on the other side of the table told you this is what you needed to do for your dog, and you're such a loving pet parent that you said, okay, I'll do whatever you tell me I need to do because I love my dog. So this is why I do these sorts of interviews, and this is why I write books, and this is why I have my Facebook page and my website, and I try to get information out there, because once people know better, once they get over feeling guilty, which don't feel guilty, because like I just said, you were being a good pet parent. You did what you were told was the best for your dog, and that's all we want. We want the best. But once you learn that I think it's a better way. Once you learn there's a different way to approach things, then you can change what you're doing. And that's the best that we can ask of anyone, is we know you love your dogs. We know that you want the best for them. People who, call me and they're crying and they're frustrated because their dog's not getting better and it's had long-standing problems for years and years, and I haven't been able to cure it with my magic wand in 10 minutes. And by the way, the longer the problem's been going on, the longer it takes to fix the problem. We generally say, if you have a pet with allergies and the allergies have been going on for 1 year, plan on at least 2 years to get it cleared up. If it's been going on for 5 years, you got 10 years to get that mess cleaned up. Allergies are awful. Bring me arthritis, I can turn that around a lot faster, particularly if it's not if it's not horribly far advanced. So it just depends what the disease is. So I'm not a huge fan of vaccines. Every pet who comes to our office, it is a conversation. We strongly recommend titers. Is it a little more expensive? Yes. Could it prevent your pet from developing cancer? One of the cancers that makes me nuts every time I see it is a fibrosarcoma. We are getting 13 and 14-pound tumors, and they are vaccine related. And I've got a woman in Turkey right now who, her dog has one that probably weighs about that on a 45-pound dog.
Wow.
You can't remove them. You cannot stop them. You cannot cure them. And it's from vaccines.
So when you say core vaccines, do you mean puppy vaccines?
So the core vaccines are distemper, parvo, and rabies. Those are the the important ones, and those are the ones that really last a very, very long time. Secondary or lifestyle vaccines would be things like Lyme disease. Now, I hate the Lyme vaccine. It treats one tick-borne disease. There's a dozen, and it's not a good vaccine. It's only 60% effective. Why would you do that? Why don't you just worry more about keeping your dog free of ticks, which, by the way, we don't want to use chemicals to do. There's a lot of natural ways. I've got a great blog on my website with how to treat and prevent fleas and ticks naturally. I don't like that vaccine. I don't, and we have no idea how long that one lasts. They haven't developed titers for it, but I can tell you the test that I use when I heartworm test dogs also has Ehrlichia, Anaplasma, and Lyme on that test. And the test will come back with either we found vaccine antibodies, we found acute infection, or we found chronic infection, or is negative. I've got dogs that haven't had vaccine. They had a Lyme vaccine 8-10 years ago. They're still finding vaccine antibodies. So if the antibodies are still there, you still got some protection there. Why would you give another vaccine? It's not the same as a titer, but there's a whole argument about what a titer really is. If there's any detectable antibody at all, that means the body recognizes that disease organism, and if they're exposed, the body's going to mount an immune response and a defense. Leptospirosis is a lifestyle vaccine. Lepto is spread through the urine of rats, raccoons, skunks, foxes, dairy cattle. The biggest outbreaks that we've seen recently have actually been in cities because of rats. So if you live in a city and you have a small dog that you have to walk on the streets of the city, I recommend that you get boots or socks. Well, boots, something that is protective and waterproof so that their feet stay clean. And frankly, I wouldn't want to walk my dog in some of those dirty places and then have it sleep in bed with me anyway. So boots. So lepto is a vaccine that is not very good again. There are 7 different serovars or types of lepto. The vaccine does 4. Your veterinarian might have the old one that only does 2. It only lasts for 9 to 12 months and is probably the most reactive vaccine that we give. There was in England a couple years ago, they had dogs dropping dead right and left, having horrible reactions, like flesh-eating bacterial reactions to the vaccine. It was bad, really bad. And kennel cough, influenza, I've never, I won't say never. I don't own flu vaccine in my clinics. We just don't use it. And kennel cough, we give very little. Only those daycare places that just absolutely insist on it, and we only use the oral one. I will never use the injectable one on that. So you go to other parts of the country, there's rattlesnake vaccine. There's a huge list of all the vaccines, their reactions, their reasons to use them in my From Needles to Natural book. The vaccine chapter and the parasite chapter are the longest chapters in the book because there's just a lot of stuff to go over with that. But I would say the majority of animals that come into my practice, they're getting titers and they're not getting vaccines. I just did a spreadsheet actually for my office looking at where our streams of income come from, and most veterinary practice vaccines are probably 50%. Ours was like 3.
That is a very interesting point that you just made there. It's all, to economics and, profits and, business. It's business.
It's business, but it's also not staying up to date. It's not. Right. I get people that email me all the time and they say, well, I asked my veterinarian about running a titer instead of giving the vaccines. And the answer was, oh, those are too hard to interpret. Well, no, because it either says positive or negative. I mean, the lab tells you it's not hard. And, oh, those are way too expensive. No, they're not. And if you're charging $300 for them, you're kind of wrong because they're not that expensive. So it's very frustrating for pet owners because they follow holistic veterinarians like me, and then they walk into the office and say, hey, I want to do it this way instead. And they do get pushback, but the people that follow me, I've trained them pretty well to just stand their ground and say, look, I'm going to politely disagree. We can agree to disagree. And if you'll agree to disagree with me, then we're going to do it my way.
And when you say titer test, can you quickly explain what titer test is?
Yeah, so it's a blood test. simple to do. We get a couple cc's of blood from the dog or cat, and we send it out to our lab. There is an in-house test that can be done. I'm not as big a fan of that. I send it to the lab because I want somebody else to be responsible for whether it's, correct. If there's a false positive or negative, I want somebody else to lean on. But I think the lab does a better job. So they take the blood and they measure how much antibody is in the blood on serial dilutions of the blood. And so our lab right now, they've changed how they report it out. They just report positive or negative. Other labs will say your dog's titer came in at 1 to 4 or 1 to 16. And for this, like for distemper, maybe that lab considers 1 to 80 being protective. And if your dog comes in at 1 to 16, they might say, well, we don't think that's enough protection. That again begs the question of, well, there was detectable antibody there, so maybe he really is protected. Yeah. And the reason that I like the titer test is if I get a negative, and I have an owner who has to take their dog to boarding, daycare, grooming, whatever, they can take that on our reporting sheet. It just says distemper. It doesn't say whether it was a titer or a vaccine. It just says distemper and the date. But if it comes back negative for distemper or parvo or rabies, and we need that because the dog is in a high-risk situation, then we can vaccinate with only that one thing. So let's say it comes back protected on distemper and not parvo. I'll just give parvo. I don't give them a combination vaccine. It's not 5 things loaded into one syringe. It's that one thing that they need.
Interesting. Wow. Thank you very much. And let me go through the next question. Supplements. What are your thoughts about supplements? When you're feeding your dog, and do you use supplements?
If you could see the 50 bottles of things that are on our counter for the 4 dogs right now. But I happen to have dogs with some pretty significant old age problems. Mine are all rescue dogs that come with disastrous issues. But that's part of the challenge. And every dog we've ever adopted or every cat we've ever adopted, they all come to me for a reason, and that's because they need to teach me something. So we use a ton of supplements for our guys. We have Cavalier King Charles Spaniels, and they have mitral valve disease. And I have a lot of Cavalier followers and a lot of Cavalier clients. And people are so tired of their dogs dropping dead from heart disease at 9 years old, 10 years old. And then they look at me and say, well, how come yours are living to 18 and 19 and mine have heart disease? Well, it's because they got a lot of supplements on board too. And I'm always researching and looking for different things. We just added probably 4 new supplements in the last couple of weeks because I took a pain management course. And of course, we got old dogs with arthritis. My mom's standard schnauzer, 50-pound dog, it's going to be 17 this week, I think. Wow. And she's really arthritic and has some autoimmune thing going on with her jaw, which is really weird. But so I took this pain management course, and they had and it was a holistic course. So all these new and different supplements to try. And I thought, well, why not? And if it's going to work for my mom's dog, it's going to work for our dogs too. So we on our website, we sell a lot of supplements. We talk about a lot of supplements, so and it's by category, so you can kind of see the stuff that I like. But when I find something new, I try it out on our guys. They're the guinea pigs. And then I'll try it out on some client dogs. And then we, see how it's working for us. If it's snake oil, we see. And I get people that send me supplements they find all the time. Well, this is what my vet recommended. This is what my groomer recommended. This is my trainer recommended. What do you think of it? And I'm clearly, if I don't know the company, I don't know their sourcing. I don't know everything about them, but I can at least look at the list of ingredients and go, well, there's 10 synthetic things in there. Is that what you want? Or, well, that one is really just all flaxseed ground up. You're paying a lot of money for ground flax. I think you can grind that yourself. So I'm a huge fan of supplements depending on what the issues are. So if I have a dog that has kidney disease, I'm going to add herbal supplements to help with that. I'm going to add CoQ10 as an anti-inflammatory. I'm going to add high doses of omega-3s. So it's different. I have an amino acid supplement I use for them, so it's different for every pet. Right now, we have one young dog we just adopted. She's only 4 or 5, but I even have her own supplements already.
So I'm kind of turning around to diet. So when we are feeding a dog, let's say fresh food, are there any essential supplements that we need to add to the food to make it like perfect meal?
Well, it depends what your base is and how well versed you are. I get people that come in the office and proudly say, "Oh, I feed a raw diet." I'm like, "Oh, great. Making your own or are you buying one?" "Oh, I'm making my own." "Okay, what are you putting in the bowl?" I go to the store and I get ground hamburger and I put it in the bowl. Well, we better add a lot of supplements because that's not going to cut it. So it really depends on how good your base diet is. And for people who are making their own, you really need to be pretty well versed to make sure that you're not leaving out micronutrients. But what I find as the most, and I've done quite a few articles on this one, the most commonly missed nutrients for people who are making their own food, whether they're cooking or doing raw, if you're not including ground bone in your raw food, you don't have enough calcium. And if you're making home cooked food and you're not adding a calcium supplement, you don't have enough calcium. And don't think that cottage cheese and yogurt is going to give you enough calcium. It is not going to do it. I love a good probiotic unless you're feeding something that's fermented. So I have a kimchi recipe in the book. A lot of people use that for themselves and for their pets. We have a lot that feed fermented raw goat milk. There's a lot of, and we have others who use powdered probiotic supplements. Vitamin D is another one that is commonly low. Vitamin D, it's a fat soluble vitamin, so we need good fats in the diet. I really like to get it from fish or egg yolks. And some people will feed, like whole ground prey, ground rabbit, something like that. But I don't like to see just one thing being used over and over and over. I think we need variety. We need to get amino acid coverage from different sources. So I'd like to see some fish. I like to see some poultry. I like to see some red meat. Our dogs don't eat the same thing 2 meals in a row. I've got 20 different proteins in the freezer, and it's just whatever I happen to pull out and thaw out for that particular meal. Some of the diets in our freezer are complete. Some of them are not complete, and I have to balance them using either whole foods, or even the supplements I use are whole food supplements. So it's for people who haven't fed raw and are thinking, wow, that sounds like a really good idea. I really think it would benefit the health of my pet. I usually tell people, go with a commercial raw first, a high quality, well-sourced. And you, again, want to be looking for human grade. I don't know what it is in Canada, but here you want to be looking for human grade. You don't want to be one of those that, oh, yeah, that's got some pentobarbital in it because, there was euthanized animals that got ground up and put in there because not so good. By the way, an awful lot of kibble, most kibble, has pentobarbital, euthanasia solution in it. The FDA at the last AFCO meeting said that's inevitable because they use rendered products in there. So it's inevitable you're going to have euthanasia solution in the food. How much euthanasia solution is too much? Any. So that's another reason to get away from kibble. So for people who haven't fed raw before, get a good commercial product and try it first. See if your dog likes it. Not all dogs like it. My mom's dog, hers has to be gently cooked. She won't eat the complete raw. But even if we take her raw diet and just warm it up ever so slightly, and raw food should be fed at body temperature or room temperature. You don't want to feed it cold out of the fridge or out of the freezer. But my mom's dog has to have hers just slightly cooked. She just doesn't like it. So you want to find out if your dog likes it before you go invest in a grinder and a freezer and all the utensils that you need to make your own. Make sure your dog likes it, make sure it agrees with them, and then start doing research and reading and figure out what would be the best thing and make sure that you are covering a lot of bases. And the thing is, if your diet is a little off, but you're rotating, you're going to catch a lot of those things that are a little deficient. But like I said, calcium, vitamin D, some of the trace minerals, manganese, which is very important for cruciate ligament tears, magnesium. But we can get those. If you're feeding whole ground prey, you're getting a lot of that from the hair. Most of us don't feed hair. We don't feed brains. We don't feed eyeballs. We don't feed a lot of the things that really need to be fed to get all of that from a prey diet.
Interesting. So, for example, I feed my dogs turkey, ground turkey with bone, green leafy vegetables in juice format, mixed a little bit, 75% meat, 25% veggies, one herring a day, chicken necks. I put cumin, ginger, a little bit of ginger, cumin, one egg. That's their diet, basically. Sounds
great. Do you add organs to that?
The meats sometimes have organs, some included in the.
Yep, perfect. I get a lot of people that they want to make their own food, but they don't. Especially the vegetarians, they're like, oh gosh, I'm not handling liver. I'm not playing with hearts. I'm not playing with kidneys. I got to tell you, folks, that stuff's really important to get organ meat in that diet. You don't want it to be all organ meat. If you get too much liver in there, you're going to get some soft stools or outright diarrhea. But it's pretty important. Those secreting organs of the body supply an awful lot of nutrition. And so all my recipes in my book, they have organs in them. They have the kidney diets have kidney in them. The heart diets have heart in them. The liver diets have liver in them. It's really important. And if you decide, well, I'm going to make my own, but I don't like handling that, I'm going to just leave that part out. Well, now you just screwed it up. So you can't. So like your diet that you're feeding, there were a lot of ingredients in there. That wasn't just throwing hamburger in the bowl. That was covering a lot of bases. You've got your vitamin D with your eggs and your herring in there. You've got poultry, you've got fish, you've got the ground bone from the necks. So you're covering a lot of bases, and people need to do that, and they need to be willing to go through all of that. Sourcing can be a little difficult sometimes for some of the weird things. I have, for people around here, I have places where I can send them, but there are so many co-ops springing up. Go to your local butcher, even the grocery store. You can go talk to the butcher at the grocery store and say, what do you do with all those trimmed end pieces? Where do they go? Can you get me some liver? Can you? We at our grocery store, before I found other sources, I asked him if he could get me some beef heart. He said, yeah, but I got to get the whole heart. And I'm like, that's like 100 pounds. Like, well, will you chop it up for me?
Do puppies need different diet than adults? How should a dog be fed daily?
Some people fast their dogs one day a week. We want our dog's blood sugar to be, really healthy blood sugar for us and for them is probably 60 to 80.
How about spaying and neutering?